DC recently announced the start of their new universe called Absolute that I'm sure you all have seen, as the Absolute Batman design trended when it was revealed due to Batman's very bulky design and chunky logo. This new universe is showing tons of promise, and I'm very interested in the universe's concept of taking heroes and reinventing them in different ways by changing a core part of their character. For example, in this universe, Batman isn't a billionaire playboy, instead he's just an engineer, and Superman, instead of arriving on Earth as a child due to Krypton's destruction, he arrives as an adult, along with certain changes to characters like Wally West, who's the Flash, but with no guidance from Barry, and Wonder Woman, who looks completely badass in this universe, was raised in hell instead of Themyscira, and they gave her a Buster Sword too, so you know I gotta tap in, bruh. After watching Terrio Boyo's 17th video about his pitch for an Absolute Green Arrow, who was apparently a fan of the channel, as he said he watches my content and he loves it, so shout out Troy, I sat down and thought to myself, how can I make this about Ben 10 like I usually do? Before the video continues, I just have to politely ask for you all to please subscribe if you're new here, as 87% of you all who watch my videos aren't subscribed, and 80% is a big number. So let's change that, as I'm trying to hit 10K by the end of this month, and I really appreciate it if you subscribe and if you like the video, if you enjoy it. But with that being said, let's get back to the video. So I decided to brainstorm some ideas for my own Green Boy and see how I could change around the origin, change around some things that'll fit in DC's new Absolute Universe's criteria. As I mentioned, the Absolute Universe takes and changes a core part of a character, and for Ben, most people might say you gotta take something away from the Omnitrix or change a part of his personality drastically for it to fit. But honestly, to me, a core part of Ben, and the thing that I would change, is his support system. Every Ben 10 show gives Ben a team that he stays with throughout the entire series. In Classic is Gwen and Max, and UAF is Kevin and Gwen, in Omniverse is Rook, and sometimes Gwen, Kevin, and Max, or sometimes all of them. I think seeing a Ben on his own would be a nice switch up and fits the criteria for the Absolute Universe it's setting. That's why I decided to get rid of Grandpa Max mainly. Grandpa Max is a vital part of Ben's origin in the same way Uncle Ben is to Peter Parker, except Grandpa Max doesn't take a fucking bullet in the chest every time he shows up. Taking away Grandpa Max means that Ben must now learn how to use the Omnitrix and figure out what he'll do with it without any outside guidance changing the trajectory of his character. Grandpa Max is the one that instills and brings out the hero in Ben in Classic with a lot of quotes and just by being a plumber that rubs off on Ben. But now without Grandpa Max, it all falls on Ben to find his own pathway to becoming a hero. However, finding that path won't be so easy, as he's so eaten up over Grandpa Max's death that this version of Ben is far different than the ones we've known. He keeps to himself a lot and he barely talks, as Max was the one person who he felt understood him and who he felt most comfortable around. Now, so far you're hearing my pitch, you're probably going like, bro, this just sounds like Ben 23. What is so different that you're doing? And while yes, you're kind of right, as Ben 23 himself said that he never had a Grandpa Max to teach him how to use the Omnitrix and be a proper hero, which inspired him to chase fame and money and all the other shit that doesn't look good when you want to be a superhero, you know? But I always felt that kind of like Ben 23 and his Max just were like never close, and them not being close is what I feel like was going to drive the eventual road trip for them so they could get together and become close. In my version, that's not what's happening, as here Absolute Ben and his Grandpa Max were always close, so close that even the littlest things that Grandpa said, that Grandpa did, it all rubbed off on Ben, taking away all his morals and characteristics just by being around him because he was his favorite person.
Being a hero isn't about others knowing you did something good. It's about you knowing you did something good. Being a hero is its own reward.
Ben holds on to all of Max's morals and teachings even after his passing, and they're sticking so strong to him that even wielding the powerful device like the Omnitrix won't be able to get in the way of what Max taught him. With Ben now being a quiet and pretty sad kid due to the loss of the one person he cared most about, you can now use this to build his relationship with Gwen in a new, interesting way. Max was just as important to Gwen as he was to Ben. Max loved his grandchildren and his death really affected them the most. But instead of being held back and broken by it like how Ben is, Gwen has channeled her feelings into something great. She locked in on her studies, became a black belt, and is picking up other hobbies, very magical hobbies to say the least. Foreshadow. But she's also worried about her cousin. This could make the dynamic start off similar to how it was when they're teenagers in Alien Force, instead of like in Classic where they just are bickering little kids. With this attempt to get closer to help her cousin, she invites him out to a camping trip her family's been planning. And it's here when the Omnitrix crashes and is discovered by Ben. But this time, it was meant to crash here and it was meant for him. Now, so everyone knows, Max's death was covered up as something that happened on a business trip, as you could call it. But in reality, he died fighting Vilgax, protecting Azimuth, as Vilgax, of course, was one of the Omnitrix. And here I make it so that in his dying breath against Vilgax, he asks Azimuth to send the Omnitrix to someone he feels will be worthy of it instead of himself, saying, as you know, he's fucking dying. And he asks Azimuth as a dying wish to send it to Ben. The idea of the Omnitrix being meant for Max is something that the show doesn't really do much with outside of the episode it's confirmed in and the other few mentions throughout the series. So I think Max being the one to send it to Ben purposefully is a cool way for you to bring that plot point back here and give it some relevance. Now, Ben finding the Omnitrix here plays out very similar to how it does in the classic show, but instead of turning into Heat Black, he turns into a more environmental friendly alien like Diamond Head, and he eventually calms down and thinks logically about the situation until he times out. And this Ben going through what he's gone through has become a lot more calm and mellow, as it's something he learned from Max, as the importance of staying calm and collected in tough situations is another thing that Max tried to tell Ben. Ben also doesn't tell anyone about the Omnitrix, and he also doesn't want to keep it. He tries desperately to remove it, but when hearing the sounds of people in trouble, he realizes that he could probably use his new device to help people. When Ben arrives on the scene, he's greeted by an alien robot sent to retrieve the Omnitrix, very similar to the one we see in episode 1 of Classic. And even though he does stop the robot, he doesn't save everyone. A few people lose their lives in this battle, causing a flow of guilt, uncertainty, and sadness to hit Ben. With Max and no connection to anyone else to be here to help guide him through a journey with the Omnitrix, Ben is lost, alone, and now has tons of guilt as the deaths of a few innocents are on his hands. Ben believes he's incapable of being a hero or even wielding the Omnitrix, and he tries his hardest to take it off. But as Ben soon finds out, the Omnitrix is practically impossible to take off, and this practically forces Ben to deal with all these consequences, forcing Ben to be a hero, forcing Ben to protect everyone from alien threats, and most importantly, forcing Ben to overcome the death of his grandpa. Ben, after the death of Grandpa, Max has ran away from all of his problems, but with the Omnitrix now bonded to him permanently, this is just something he can't run away from, and something he has to do whether he wants to or not. And that's the main focus I would give an absolute Ben 10 comic. Make it about a Ben who's destroyed by the loss of Grandpa Max and has his call of action forced upon him and is forced to really get over this tragedy by having the Omnitrix bond to him. As you know, it just doesn't fucking come off. You know, it's his now by force. This all ultimately does force him to become a hero against his own will and belief, but it's something he'll definitely be able to live up to. I would also throw in the support of Gwen, just so he can have someone to express his frustrations to in dark moments and tough times. Also, the idea of Max sending the Omnitrix to Ben after his death, the death that Ben is so beaten up by, being used as a way for him to get over Max's death just sounded way too good for me not to include, even though it may be a bit complicated maybe. Villains I think that would be good for the story. Some I think would be good would be Albedo and the Forever Knights. Albedo can come to Earth looking for Ben to retrieve the Omnitrix back because he believes that it never should have been sent to a human. And as for the Forever Knights, they can operate as sort of like a gang in Bellwood, doing business with the aliens of Undertown for weapons and gear until they realize how much of a threat aliens are due to all the alien threats coming to Earth in search of Ben. I also think that since Vilgax is dead in this story, we can maybe get a story about his son wanting the Omnitrix to complete his father's long goal, get revenge of the next closest Tennyson since Max isn't here, for what happened to his father. Introducing Vilgax's son could make this story a type of sins of the father type of deal, which I think has a lot of potential if you really think about it. Vilgax is the most known conqueror in the universe, and Max is one of the most well-regarded plumbers ever. So having their epic feud be passed down to their son and grandson would be dope as hell. Now I bet some of y'all confused, like, Vilgax have a son? Where did all that come from? And that's just a little. So it's a little detail I pulled from a random info card that was dropped a few years during Alien Forces production. It's definitely like not canon at all. They told me this nigga was like in a different dimension or something like that. Like I said, these info cards in general just are like not canon. But I still like the idea of Vilgax having a son, even if it isn't canon. So let's just make it canon here. Fuck it. Now, as for the plumber's place in this story, I think once Ben and the Omnitrix have become well known on Earth, I would have them send out a new high-ranked plumber to take Max's place on Earth. Now, as for the plumbers and their place in the story, I think once Ben and the Omnitrix have become well known, I would have them send out a new high-ranked plumber to take Max's place, and that plumber would be Rook, who eventually would team up with Ben, but this time switching their dynamic from how it is in Omniverse. This time, Ben is seemingly the rookie who needs to be trained, while Rook takes the lead as the experienced one. And this would allow Ben to hear so many legendary stories about his grandfather being told from Rook's perspective. In this story, Rook would basically take Ben under his wing, teaching him how to be a plumber and how to solve situations effectively without causing so much collateral damage. I'd have Rook and Ben partnership be similar to that of like a Gohan and Piccolo, except Piccolo is actually fun to be around, as Rook and Ben would spend a lot of time together just bonding instead of just solely working to defend the galaxy or the Earth and shit. I would also introduce Kevin into this story as more of an anti-hero type of character. He uses his powers to protect and provide for himself and also the few he cares about. He'll also get into it with Ben a lot due to him stealing and killing some of the Forever Knights due to their alien racism, as that's something Kevin just won't stand for, as he has a strong connection with aliens and just in general the people of Undertown. Kevin would sometimes aid Rook and Ben on their cause in protecting the Earth, even with their different methods of approach, but Kevin and Ben would never outright be enemies or allies. Sometimes they'll have conflict with each other, as Kevin is driven by his own morals that differ from Ben's, but sometimes those morals and goals can align and they can find the strength to trust each other for a given situation. Overall, at its core, I would want an absolute Ben storyline to be about the importance of moving forward. Moving forward from tragedy is probably the hardest thing in life, as a tragedy can make you lose motivation, make you lose hope, make you lose faith, and honestly just zip away any will to live sometimes. Tenny is such a big part of Ben, like always having this strong support system and team around him, to now basically putting him on his own and feeling like he has no one to lean on for help is definitely a big change. And that's the point, honestly. The Absolute Universe, from what I've gathered, is about change. Drastically changing these iconic heroes' origins, like Superman, like Batman, like Wonder Woman, all to show that no matter how different things are for them, they'll become heroes no matter what. And I feel that same sentiment for Ben, of course. No matter what you take away from Ben Tennyson, whether it's the Omniverse, whether it's a part of his character, whether it's the people, he'll still become that hero of heroes that he does every single time. Because no matter what happens, he'll absolutely become Ben 10. You see what I did there? Absolutely. Okay, I'll shut the fuck up. I'm absolutely in love with DC's Absolute Universe, and I'm very excited to read all the comics and see how the characters are going to be completely reinvented in this new universe. And since Ben is closer to DC than any other comic property, that's really why I had to make this video, because it was just too good of an idea to pass up. So I also want to extend the idea to you all. Let me know down in the comments down below how you would do an Absolute Ben 10 storyline. Let me know what you would change and all the extra little details that I'm sure you guys have in mind. If you like my ideas and you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my content. We're on the road to 10K, as well as checking out some of my other stuff on the channel. I started my Ben 10 rewatch recently, so I highly recommend you check that out. And that's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, it's been Dan, the Boy Wonder, signing out. Peace.